is Arya, and I welcome you all to today's live session, which is going to be all about Bootstrap. We're going to be focusing on Bootstrap 4 because that's the latest version of Bootstrap. Now, before we proceed, let me just go over the topics that I intend to cover throughout this live session. So, firstly, I'll start off with a little history on Bootstrap and what purpose it serves. Then we will also discuss as to why it has gained so much popularity and widespread use by web developers across the globe. After that, we will have a hands-on code along session where I'll try and cover all the styling elements that are covered by Bootstrap 4. So what exactly is Bootstrap? Well, if you have any sort of interest or experience in web development, you've probably heard of the name Bootstrap. Now, according to the official website of Bootstrap, it is the most popular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript framework for developing responsive, mobile-first projects on the web. Now, Bootstrap can be boiled down to three major files. Firstly, it is the bootstrap.css file, which is a CSS framework containing all the styling that is provided by Bootstrap. Next is the bootstrap.javascript file, which is a combination of Bootstrap's own JavaScript and the whole jQuery framework, which is basically used for making all the dynamic elements like a drop-down menu, a carousel, using Bootstrap. The third is an icon set, which is popularly known as glyphicons or poppers. Now, this is basically mostly used for fonts and small little icons that are distributed throughout Bootstrap for making things look much more prettier. Now, additionally, Bootstrap, as you guys have already realized, requires jQuery to function. Now, jQuery is an extremely popular and widely used JavaScript library that both simplifies and adds cross-browser compatibility to JavaScript. If you want to learn about jQuery, you should definitely check out our jQuery tutorial, which is in the playlist that this video is in. So Bootstrap was developed by Mark Otto and Jacob Thornton at Twitter, and it was released as an open source project in 2011 on GitHub. And in June 2014, Bootstrap was also voted the #1 project on GitHub. So that kind of says a lot about Bootstrap as a framework. So a question normally arises that why should I be using Bootstrap? Well, here are a few advantages of using Bootstrap that actually answers that question. So first of all is Bootstrap's excellent browser compatibility. Now, Bootstrap is compatible with all sorts of modern browsers, including Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Edge, Safari, and Opera. Secondly is it's very easy to use and easy to learn. Anybody with just basic knowledge of HTML and CSS can start using Bootstrap at a professional level. Now, the third point is that it has a mobile-first approach. So in Bootstrap 3, the mobile-first styles became a core part of the framework, which makes it very easy to actually create a style that works both on the desktop and on a mobile view. And the fourth point is that Bootstrap is filled with responsive features that adjust the CSS just according to the phones, tablets, and desktops. And you'll see what I mean when we are going through the code along session. So now that I've told you guys what exactly is Bootstrap and why it has a certain advantage and why you should be using it in your project, let me show you guys how you can add Bootstrap to your very own project. So firstly, we need to head to the site called getbootstrap.com. So out here, you have the option of downloading Bootstrap with all the files, that is jQuery, the JavaScript file, the icon file, and the CSS file. So that's 4 files that you'll be downloading, and you can manually add them to your application that you're writing. So other than downloading the Bootstrap files and adding them manually, you can also add a CDN link. Now, CDN links actually serve a better purpose because it makes the site load faster because it just has to refer to a link instead of downloading a complete file. And it's also easier to add. So to add Bootstrap to your application, all you have to do is copy these 4 links down and add them in the head tag of your HTML file. So let's go ahead and do that. So let me just copy the first file, which is the CSS file, and let's go ahead. So I already have this bootstrap.html file created. So let me just put down the HTML boilerplate. Now our title is going to be Bootstrap 4 tutorial because that's exactly what we're doing. Now in the head tag, all you have to do is add these links. So firstly, what did we add? We added the Bootstrap CSS framework. So that's what we've added out here. Next, what we have to add is these 3 links. So let's go ahead and copy them down and let's add them. Let's reindent our lines. So what is this exactly? So as you guys can see, this is the jQuery file. So let's comment that out. So jQuery CDN And then we also have the popper or the glyphicons. So we can just call them icons. I spell CDN wrong out here. It doesn't really matter. And next, what we have to add is the Bootstrap JavaScript files. So this is the Bootstrap JavaScript. So now that we've actually added Bootstrap into our application, we're good to go. So let's save it. And now we can just start creating a bunch of elements that are specific to Bootstrap. So in Bootstrap, what we have to do to actually create a Bootstrap styled element is basically add classes. Now, classes that are in the Bootstrap file will contain the styling that go with that certain element. And let me just show you how that's done. So the first thing that we are actually going to create is an alert. So let me just comment that out. So let me show you how alerts are created using Bootstrap. Now, as I just said, we are going to be adding classes to basic HTML elements. So firstly, let's create a div and let's give it a class called container. Now, what the container class does is actually containerize a certain element that is going to be surrounded by this div. Now, to create an alert, we again create a div, and all we have to do is add a class and say alert. Now, we can also add colors to this alert by adding some class like alert primary. And let me also comment out all the colors that are possible from Bootstrap. So first is primary, which is a blue color. Then is success, which is somewhat green in color. And there's danger, which is red in color. There's also info, which I'm not really sure about what color it was. And we also have warning. So these are the 5 pre-made colors that come along with Bootstrap. And you'll understand what I mean just in a second. So firstly, we've created a div with the class alert and alert primary. Now we can add some text inside our alert. So let's see. So well done. We can say something like, you have successfully created an alert. So now that's saved, let's go ahead and actually open it up. So this is where I've saved it. Okay, so now you see that we have this neat little alert on our screen. Now, mind you, we haven't written any CSS code. All we did was add a bunch of classes to our HTML elements. And what Bootstrap does is fetch those classes styling elements and just attach them to the element that you have put the classes on. So firstly is the container class, which is containerizing all this thing. Let me just comment the container class out and you'll see the difference that it makes. Let's save that. And you see, now if we uncomment the container class, then it'll come back to the way it was. We just do that, save it back again, and this is what the container class does. Now the primary color, which is the blue color, is given by this class called alert primary. And what the alert class out here does is add this nice little box, this nice border that you're seeing out here, and the text color too. So that's how Bootstrap is working on every single computer out there. So this is how you create alerts using Bootstrap. Now, alerts are not the only thing you can create with Bootstrap. There are a bunch of other stuff you can also create, and something like that is buttons. So let's create some buttons. So a button is normally also a tag. So all you have to do is add some link. So let's leave the link blank for now. So put a class. So our buttons are going to have the class called button. And then we are going to add the color, let's say button success. And you could add some text into the button. Let's save it. And let's reload our page. So now you see we have this nice little submit button. We didn't write any CSS for it. We just told it that the color is going to be green and it's going to be a button. We didn't even use the button element. Mind you, we are using an a tag, which is a link. Now, if you were to click, you see that this hash is getting added out here. Now, if I were to say that we are to go to HTTPS, something like www.edureka.co. Let's reload that, and if we now press this button, we will be headed to the Edureka website. So that's how buttons work in Bootstrap. Let's go back quickly. Let's reload this page. Nice. So there's another kind of button that you can also make. Now, let me make it side by side. Let's copy this down. Now, you can also have an outline button. So you can say btn outline success. So you just add the outline class, and let me show you what difference that makes. So now we have a button that is outlined. Now if you hover over this button, the text turns white and the background turns green, which is exactly like this. But as soon as you do not hover over it, it goes to this nice outline form. You can also click it and it'll take you to the Edureka website, and it functions in quite the same way. Now let me just demonstrate all the colors through the buttons so that we can just stick to one color throughout this tutorial. So let's see. I've already showed you success and primary. So let me show you danger. Let's reload. Now we have red color buttons that do exactly the same thing. Let me also show you info. So info will look something like this. It's this nice sky blue color, which is not exactly the primary color. Let me show you what a primary button will also look like. So you'll see the color difference. Yeah, it's a darker shade of blue, and that's what primary looks like. And let me show you what warning looks like. So warning looks something like this. I think it's a little grayish. Okay, it's yellow actually. So this is what yellow. So this is what warning looks like. It's got this black text and this yellow text in the outline form. So these are all the colors, and we'll mostly be sticking to primary throughout the course of this tutorial. Now there's another kind of button called a block level button. So for a block level button, let me first create a div called container. So let's call this container. Let's copy this down, paste this inside. And to create a block level button, all we have to do is add the class btn block. So once we add the class btn block, you'll see that it has a block level button. Now let me remove these two buttons so it looks a little neater. Yeah, now we have this block level button out here. If we actually didn't containerize this, it'll go across the screen and look pretty bad. So yeah, that's what a block level button looks like, but it looks much better with a container. So you can have this in all sorts of colors. You can make this a warning, I guess. It's already a warning. You can make a danger, and it'll become like that. You can also remove the outline part of it, and it'll look nice, bright, and bold. And now we have the big submit button that goes right across the screen. Nobody can actually miss this submit button. So yeah, that's how you create buttons using Bootstrap. Okay, so now that I've shown you guys how to create buttons, let me also show you guys how to create drop-down menus. So first let's comment that out, that what we're creating drop-downs. Now drop-downs are basically a bunch of buttons grouped together. So firstly, we will be creating a div that has a class that is btn group, so which basically means button grouping. Now inside this, we are going to be creating a bunch of stuff. So firstly, we are going to be creating a button. So a button is going to have a class, first of all, which is going to say is drop-down menu, or rather, firstly, our button is going to have a class called btn, first of all, btn primary for the color. And then we're going to also add a class called drop-down toggle, drop-down and toggle. Now we also have to add a bunch of other stuff. So firstly, we say data toggle is going to be drop-down. So once that's set up, we also have to say if it will pop up when the screen is actually open. So we don't actually want that. So there's a way to do that. So firstly, ARIA has pop-up, and we set this to true. So that means it will pop up when required. And we also want to say ARIA expanded. That means if it's already expanded. So, and we set that false. So that's done. Now let's add some text to this button. So let's call it drop down. Okay, so our button's basically created. Now we need another div which will contain all the elements that are inside the drop down menu. So this will have a class called drop down menu. And we also have to add some styling to this thing. So firstly, we have to set the X placement, and we say bottom start. Right, once that's done, we actually put in some styling. So style, we firstly have to say that the position is absolute. So position absolute. Then we also have to say if it will transform. So we say will change and transform. And we say top is going to be 0 pixels. And left is also going to be 0 pixels. Not padding left, just left. So that's going to be 0 pixels. And we also have to set our transformation. So we say transform and translate in the 3D manner. So translate 3D. So we're going to translate by 0 pixel on the x-axis. Y-axis is going to be around 38 pixels. It's a semicolon, I guess. It's a comma. That's 38 pixels and 0 pixels on the z-axis. We've done saving that. Now inside this div, we actually have to enter all the elements that we wish to add as drop-down menus. So firstly, they're all going to be A tags. They won't really have any links to them. We'll add a class and we'll say drop down item. Okay, so now we have 4 items. Now we can name our items whatever we want. We can say home, shop, and let's say cart. And we can also put an option like checkout. So we've created 2 divs, basically. This div will group out all these buttons. Let's save this. And now we have a button called dropdown. Now it has all the items that we have also created, like home, shop, cart, and checkout. And that's how we create a drop-down menu. Now we can also add a divider inside this. So let me show you how to do that. So this is going to be another class, and this class is going to be drop-down divider. So drop-down and divider. So this will add a horizontal rule throughout our drop-down. And after this, we could also add a class to just show you how stuff works. And this is also going to have a class called drop-down item. And we could say something like profile. Let's save it. Let's reload it. And now we have this nice little horizontal line, and we also have this profile item added to our drop-down list. And that's how you basically create drop-down menus in Bootstrap. Now we can also add the container class out here. Say class container. Let's add this div ending. Let's re-indent our lines. And now you see it's shifted out here a bit. And that's how you create a drop-down menu using Bootstrap. So let's remove this now. Now let me show you how to actually group buttons using Bootstrap, because we've also already used the button group class, so it only makes sense that I show that to you. So what we're going to see is button grouping. So button grouping is very useful when you want to group a bunch of buttons together. So let me just show you how to do that. So first you create a div and give it a class called button group. So btn group. Next, what you have to do is create a bunch of buttons. So we can create just a couple of A tags, let's say. Let's create 3 A tags. Let's give them no links. And it's going to have a class. Now we can add a bunch of buttons. So btn, let's say btn success. Now we could just add some text out here for each button. Now this could say 1, now 2, and 3. Okay, so that should create 3 buttons grouped together. Now you see we have 3 different buttons that are actually grouped together, right? Now you could have added an outline in this button and it would have been exactly the same. Let me show you. Yeah, now you see this has this nice little outline feature, and that's how you group buttons together. Now you can also group buttons together in a vertical fashion. So to do that, all you have to do is change this class to button group vertical. If you change that to vertical, this becomes a vertically grouped buttons. So these are how you can group buttons vertically and horizontally. So that was all about button grouping, guys. So now what we want to check out next is checkboxes. So let's see how you can create checkboxes using Bootstrap. So what are we creating? We're creating checkboxes. Now checkboxes are very useful in forms mostly if you want to check out something. So let's show you separately how to create checkboxes. So firstly, we are going to be creating a class called, and basically we're going to group a bunch of buttons together. So button group, and you can also add the thing called button group toggle. So we add the class button group and the class button group toggle. So this helps us actually toggle the buttons. And we also have to add this other attribute called data toggle. and it'll say buttons. Now all we have to do is create a bunch of labels and inputs. So we're going to create 2 labels and 2 inputs. Let's copy this down so that we can do our editing at once. Now our labels will have a class. So let's add those classes first. So the label will get the class of btn, the button class, then we can make it in some color. So btn outline primary. Let's use the primary color. And you can set one to active and the other one not active. So out here, you can just add the active class. So out here, let's put the type as checkbox. We don't really need the name. And we can put something like checkbox 1 and checkbox 2. Save that. Let's see what it's coming out to look like. So yeah, we have 2 checkboxes. We can check them and uncheck them, and that's how they work. So this is how checkboxes are created using Bootstrap. So that was pretty simple. Now let me show you another element, which is cards. So cards are a very good way to showcase some information about some part or some product that you're trying to sell or you're trying to showcase on your website. So let me just show you how to create cards. So basically, we're going to have a div that has a class called card. So first primary class that we're adding is the card. Then we're going to say bg primary. So the background will be primary. Next, we're going to say that the text will be white. So text white. Now we're going to say mb3, which is a display method. And we will also center our text, so text center. Yeah, that was a lot of new classes that you just saw, but they're pretty simple. Next, we're also going to have a div with a class called card body. So this is going to be the content of your card. Now we could add some random stuff. So firstly, let's add a quote. So block quote. Now you can add the class card block quote. And inside this, we could add a quote of our own. So let's say some lorem ipsum. Now this is a very big quote, so let's delete a bit of it. So now we've deleted that. So we have some quote going on. Now we can also add a footer. And we can say something like some famous person. And inside the footer, we can also add a citation. Cite, you could say we get a title of something like title. And you could say something like person. It's just, I'm just adding random stuff at this moment. So this is how you basically create a card. Now let me show you what this card looks like. Yeah, so this is what your card looks like in the Bootstrap way. So now you can also add a container to this and it'll make it look much neater. So let's add a container. So container, let's copy this div ending and paste it right in the end. Let's save our things and let's see. So now you see we have this nice little card going here, and it's a nice way to actually showcase some information. You could add images and you can do a lot of stuff with cards. So I'm leaving the creative aspect to you. I'm just going to show you how different stuff is created using Bootstrap. Okay, so that was all about cards. So now let's create something interesting, and that is a carousel. Okay, so carousel is something that is normally used for showcasing a slide. So basically, let me just create it and show it to you. I'm bad at articulating my stuff at sometimes. So what are we creating? We're creating a carousel. So when I create the carousel, it'll be pretty obvious where you can use it. So firstly, this carousel will also have an ID. So first ID that we're going to use is carousel example control. You can name it whatever you want. You'll see how this ID is used. So that is that. And we will also add a class called carousel slide. So carousel slide. And we will also have a data writing attribute. And we say carousel. So that is going to be the first main div of our carousel. Next, we have to create the inner parts of our carousel. So this is going to be a separate div. So this div is going to be calling itself a carousel inner. So that's going to be the class. And we will also have to add a role, and it'll say list box. Now in this div, all you have to do is add the items that are going to be added inside your carousel. So we're going to be adding 3 items basically. It's going to be 3 very basic images. So let's see. Each item will be inside a div called carousel item. So class carousel item. And inside each div, all you want to showcase is an image. So image. So our image is actually stored out here in this folder. So if you see, we have slider 1, slider 2, and slider 3. So you add those as your source, slider1.png, save it. And we also have to add some few attributes in this. So firstly, it's going to have a class called dblock and image fluid. So it'll be a very fluid transition. And we could also add an alt tag if our image doesn't get loaded. So first image, something like that. And that's it. Now let's create 2 more just like this. So slider 2, and we could say something like second image for this one. And then we say slider 3. Okay, so this has made the parts that are going to be actually showcased throughout our carousel. Now we also need to create the navigation elements of our carousel, like the previous buttons and the next buttons. So for that, we are going to be using a tags. So a tag and our href is going to be the link to the ID that we created. So you could have named your ID anything you wanted. So we named our ID carousel example controls. Let's copy that and let's paste it. So that's going to be the link. Now we also need to add a class, and this is going to be carousel control and prev. So carousel control previous basically. Now we also have to add a role, which is have the role of button, and we are also sliding some data to the data slide, and we're going to say prev. Now inside this a tag, all you have to do is create a span that will actually showcase the icons. So for this, we're going to be using that poppers or that glyphicons part that we had added out here, this part, the icons part. So let's go ahead and create that. So this is going to be a span, and it's going to have the class of carousel, control, prev, and icon. And let's also add the aria hidden. And let's say it's going to be true. And out here we will also add another span, and this will say previous. And out here we also have to add a class called sr only. Now we also have to create a next button. Just copy that down, and all you have to do is say carousel control next out here. Let's say the data slide is also going to be next, and we are going to use the next icon, and previous should say next, and that's it. Now, since this is a very big thing, I'll prefer to put this in a container. So div and class container, save it, put this at the end. Okay, so now that we've created our carousel, let me just show you what it looks like on the web. So let's reload our page. Okay, so we have this carousel-like thingy, but it's not really there. So we have to add the container class. So div, and you add the class container. I don't know why it got deleted. Save it, and now let's reload. Okay, so if you guys can't see it out here, we have this button that goes out here, and we also have this button out here if you see. My images are not really perfectly sized, so it's not completely handling the carousel really well, but this is where you would add a carousel, and this is how you create a carousel using Bootstrap. So that was all about carousels. Now let's move ahead with forms and how you can neatly create forms using Bootstrap 4. Okay, so let's delete that. Let's reload our page, and we have nothing. So firstly, let's say we're going to do some forms. Now let's get started with our form. So firstly, we're going to create the form tags. Inside the form tags, we're going to create a bunch of stuff. So firstly, it's going to be a div. It's going to have the class of form group. So inside the form group, we can add our stuff that is going to be inside our form. So firstly, let's create a label, say for email, and let's create, say, email address, something like that. Now we also have to create an input. Let's give the type email. Let's give the name email. So I'll just put a placeholder, say email, and let's make it required. So that's how you do it. Now we can put all of this in a container too to make it much neater. So let's see. So now we have this thing going. Firstly, we need to actually give this some more classes. So our input is going to have the class called form control. Now just see how it changes. So it's there, and now we have form control. So now it's much neater. We have this nicely rounded box. It has this placeholder that we were creating. It gets focused. It has this nice little thing. It's a lot of nuanced thingies that are actually being added with just one class, and that is form control. Now you can also make a bunch of stuff like this. So you could say, let's create an actual form. So we could say email and username. Then we could say password and something like confirm password. Right. And we could say this is for username and this is for, let's say, so the type is going to be password. The name is going to be password. Let's call this password 1. Let's call this password 2. It's password 1 and let's change this to 2. Let's save that. So we don't need a placeholder for these. Save it. Let's see what it looks like. So we have this thing going. And we also need a submit button. So our submit button will also go here. So we say a tag. Say now we add a class. Say we btn. Say btn success. And let's make it outlined also. And say submit. Save it. And now we have a submit button too for our form. So it goes green like that. So let's try and add some email. Let's add that email. Let's add a username like Ariaholic. Let's add a password, something like Ariaholic1234. And we can also confirm a password. So Ariaholic1234. And that's how you create a form using Bootstrap. Okay, so that was all about forms. Let me just show you how you can create an inline form using Bootstrap. So that's a different thing. So firstly, we are going to create the form tag and it's going to have a class inline form, or it's actually form inline. Now let's create a bunch of labels. So label is going to have a class of SR only. I'm going to say for username. And we're going to say that the label is also going to say username. Then we could add a div. In this div, our class will be called input group. Then we also have to add a class called mb2, which is just a display section. And yeah, we also add some stuff like mr sm2 and mb sm0. So this is just to control the displays. Now all you have to do is add the input inside the div. So you say input, type will be text, name will be username. Now we also need to add a class called form control. Yeah. Okay. We can also add a placeholder called username. So let's save that. Let's see what it looks like. So yeah, we have this thing called username going. So that's an inline form. Now we can add a button to make it much more realistic. So let's add a button. Let's make it called submit. Yeah, now it comes in line with this. So once you press the button, you add any username and say go. So that's what an inline form does. Okay, so that was all about forms. Now let's see something more interesting, and that thing is a Jumbotron. Okay, so let's see how you can create Jumbotrons. So Jumbotrons are pretty simple to create. You go div, add a class called Jumbotron. Now inside this Jumbotron class div, you can add your elements. So firstly, let's add an h1 and let's say, welcome to my website. You can also add a class and say display3, which is the type of h1 that will be shown. Now let's say you can also add some info. This is a simple Jumbotron that draws attention. Now this will have a class called lead, because that is the lead text of your Jumbotron. We can also add a horizontal line, and this can also have a class called my4, which is a type of horizontal line. And let's see, you can also add some stuff after this. Let's say some random text, so lorem ipsum. And let's delete half these stuff. You could also probably add a button inside your Jumbotron and say btn, and since you're saying more info, so btn info, and you could say learn more. So let's create that and let's see. Okay, so now we have this nice little Jumbotron. So as you guys can see, we have created a simple Jumbotron. That's this nice little h1 that says welcome to my website. And then we have this horizontal line going. So if you see, this is what a lead text looks like, and this is what a normal text looks like. And we have this nice little button that says learn more. Okay, so that's how you create a Jumbotron, and normally stays at the top of your page. So that was all about Jumbotrons. Now let's move ahead and see how lists are styled using Bootstrap. So let's delete that all. Say lists. So we're going to try and create some lists. Firstly, we're going to create an unordered list, and this is going to have a class called list group. So Bootstrap is basically memorizing all the classes and what they do. Now you don't really need to memorize them. You can just open the documentation when you're doing that. So let's actually create a bunch of list items, to be honest. So li, these are going to have a class called list item, or rather list group item. Now we can call these items something separate. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's see what this basic list looks like for now. Okay, so this is what our list is looking like. We can also add the div called class container on this list. Let's fix that. Yeah, so we have this div list going on now. Looks much neater now. Let me just show you some other stuff that you can add to your list. So firstly, you can add badges and spans. So yeah, we can also create badges using Bootstrap. Let's see, class, and to create a badge, all you have to say badge, then probably the badge color. So badge primary. It's that simple. You can add a badge like that. And inside this, you could say something like, this is also a part. Yeah, so we can add stuff like this to our list. Now we can make it a build badge also. So to make it a build badge, you can say badge build. So that's the class you add, make it a build badge. It's not really showing the difference, but if you see out here, let me zoom in, it's rounded. And if you were to just remove that, you'll see it's not that rounded. Yep, that's the change that the build part makes. So you can add stuff like this into your list. Now, if you see, this doesn't really look cool. So what you have to do is add this between an li, and this will have a special class. So let me just show that to you. Out here, just have to add the class list group item, and you say justify content in between. Justify content between, and that will basically justify the stuff in between. Let me just show you how that works. Yeah, so now you have a badge inside the list instead of it being actually added to the list in a really weird way. You can also add some text, something like Andante Allegro or something like that. Yeah. Now you can also make one of the items primary. So to do that, all you have to do, let's see, list group item, and you just add the class primary. So those are two different classes, and now you see it's selected out here. So you can make that any one of these, and it'll be slightly shaded out. So that's how you create lists in Bootstrap 4. Okay, now with that, we're done with lists. Let's move on to paginations. So paginations is really useful when you have multiple pages on your website. So pagination is normally used to direct you from one page to the other. Let me just show you how to create that. Firstly, we'll be using the nav tag, and we'll get a label, rel label, and we're going to say, let's say page navigation example. So this is not really necessary, just doing it for doing sake. Page navigation example. Now inside the nav tag, you will have a bunch of lists. So create an unordered list. So it's going to have a class called pagination. Next, you create a list item, and it'll have a class called page item. And inside this list item, you add a link to the page, whichever page that is. Not worry about that, but this will have a class called page link. So yeah, this is how you create page links. Let's just create a bunch of them. So firstly, this could be called previous. Let's see. Yeah, so out here you could say page 1, page 2, and next. This is what a normal pagination actually looks like. Let me just show you what that looks like. Yeah, so now you have page 1, page 2, and next. So that's how you actually create paginations. So that covers paginations. Now let me just show you how to create a progress bar. The progress bars are really useful if you have some sort of quiz or some sort of survey, which will then show the user how much of progress is made. So progress, and we first create a div, and of course we add a class called progress. Now we also create another div, and in this div we add a class. Now pay attention. So this will be called progress bar. Then the type of progress bar. So I'm going to use the progress bar stripped. So it'll be a striped progress bar, and you could say it'll be animated. So progress bar animated. And you could also say the background. So BG primary. And it'll have the role of a progress bar. Okay, so we are actually missing some attributes, but let's test it if it works without those attributes. So now you see we have this weird little progress bar out here. Now let me just add some attributes to this. So you could say something like aria value now is equals to 75. So basically 3/4 will be completed, and aria value min is 0. Then we have to set the value max. So aria value max is 100. And let's add some styling. Say width is 75%. And that's about it. So let's save it. Let's see. So now you see we have this progress bar that is 75% filled. It has maximum of 100 and minimum of 0. And that's how you create a progress bar. So that was about progress bars. Now to end this tutorial, I'm going to show you all how to create a table. And tables are pretty fun to create in Bootstrap because it's really easy. So firstly, your table element will have a class, and it'll say table class and say table hover, which is a type of table, and table striped. Now you need to create the class heads, so thead. Now this will have a class called thead dark. So it will have a very dark row for all the table headers. So out here you can just create a bunch of stuff. So you could say something like first name, then you could say middle name, and you could say last name. Now that creates a table header. Now we need to create a table body. And then the table body, all you need to do is add the contents of your table. So that's pretty simple. So let's do that. So all we have to do is add a bunch of TDs. So we're going to have 3 TDs. And let's copy this down thrice. Now 3 rows. Okay, so let's see. So Arya, Michael, Paul. Let's add some other name like Adam Stanton Gilchrist. That's not his real middle name, but I'm just guessing. We could also add something like Ricky Martin Ponting. Save it. Table's created. Yeah, now we have this nice little name. Every time we hover, we get this nice little thing. So that comes from this table hover class. And this dark thing comes from the table dark, thead dark. And now we have a really neat table. So that actually wraps up our Bootstrap 4 tutorial for today. I hope you guys had a lot of fun learning with me on how to use Bootstrap and actually create responsive UIs for your websites in a quick and easy manner. Until next time, goodbye.